Basically, the idea I had for this podcast is to, rather than research you and know everything there is to know about you and have all these questions prepared, kind of just go in a little bit blind and have a conversation with somebody who also just likes cycling and just kind of basically learn about each other and see how it goes. So thanks for coming along and giving me some of your time. I imagine it must be pretty early in the morning for you.
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. here,
Oh,
which is what time I normally get up, but I got up a little bit earlier today, so I got up at 4:30. So sorry, I kind of just woke up.
No, that's fine. The early rise of the day. I was talking to someone yesterday, and we were on at 6 a.m. their time, but it's 1 p.m. now for me in the afternoon.
And on Friday, is it 1 p.m. on Friday?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, Friday afternoon, Friday morning. No, I'm not that far ahead. I'm not in Australia.
Okay. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the same day, but just in the afternoon.
No, I'm about 7 or 8 hours ahead of you, or whatever it works out as. Okay, so I suppose if we start off, if you just tell me a little bit about yourself and how kind of cycling is involved in your life.
My name's Kathryn Dove. I live in Washington State. So I'm in Snoqualmie, so just east of Seattle. I'm a Kona ambassador, so I've been a Kona ambassador for 2 years. I think this will be coming up on my 3rd year as a Kona ambassador. I also work, I'm a physical therapist. So I work in outpatient physical therapy in Seattle. I've been doing that for, I think 8 years now.
Okay.
And yeah, I've been riding, I've been mountain biking since 2010. So I guess before I went to PT school. So it's been about 12 years now. And yeah, that's kind of the main thing I do with my free time. Although in the winter, it sort of switches to winter sports like skiing and snowboarding.
Okay. So there's not much of an opportunity for you to cycle at all during the winter. Is there just too much snowfall?
No, there's actually, there's a area pretty close to our house that is usually snow-free all winter. There's usually only like 1 or 2 weeks where you actually couldn't ride bikes. So yeah, we're pretty lucky. Last winter wasn't great for snow, but it was good for mountain biking all winter. So yeah, I think there was only like a couple weeks where I couldn't ride.
Okay, yeah, I know here for winter it just rains, and more rain. The off chance that we do get snow, the whole country just shuts down and everybody goes crazy because we're just not prepared for it. We don't have that kind of a climate. It's just wet.
Remind me what location you're in?
Oh, sorry. So I'm in Ireland, in the west coast of Ireland, right on the edge of the Atlantic. So yeah, it's a very mild climate. Never gets too hot, never gets too cold, but it rains more often than it doesn't.
Okay. What is the city that you're in or closest to? Or?
So I live in the city called Galway. It's I think the 3rd or 4th largest city in Ireland. But even Ireland, like city wise, like the population of the whole country is only about 5.5 million or 6 million or something like that. Like, you know, it's not huge. Definitely nowhere near as big a population as the UK next to us. But yeah, so there's like with that small of a population, the cycling community is quite small. Mm-hmm. It's a very small market here in Ireland, but at the same time, because it's so small, it's like everybody nearly knows everybody. Mm-hmm. So like whenever you go to an event or a race or anything, like you always see the same faces. You always for me, I recognize people by their bikes rather than their faces. Like I can say, oh, I remember I saw that bike, 6 months ago in this place, or I saw that bike last year. It's like, oh, I remember you. Like no idea who you are or what your name is, but I remember seeing your bike.
Yeah. I've actually been to Galway. But it's been quite a while. It was, I think, during one of my summers during college, we did a trip to Europe, and I remember going to Galway.
Oh, cool! Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
Did it rain?
No. I mean, it was in the summer. I think it was in either July or August. It was really nice. I went to Galway and then took a boat to one of the Aran Islands. I think it was Inishmore. Is that the bigger one?
The biggest one is Inishmore. Yeah, more literally means big.
So okay.
Inishmore means big island.
Yeah, so I remember that was like one of the just the that whole part of my trip was like one of the highlights of the summer.
Awesome. That's cool. What was it that kind of brought you into cycling? So you said you started mountain biking around 2010. Like, what was it that kind of attracted you to it?
It was definitely due to my now husband, then boyfriend. He
Okay.
had started mountain biking in college, and it, I mean, mountain biking was one of those things I kind of like. I knew people who did it growing up, like when I was in high school, but I just didn't
Mm-hmm.
like. I don't know why I didn't really think it was an option for me, but yeah, then I guess it was after college I started dating my now husband. He was into mountain biking, so then he would let me ride one of his bikes, and then he ended up I think it was a birthday present. He got me a not the nicest bike, but it was my first bike. So yeah, that's kind of what helped actually get me into it.
Cool. And it was straight into mountain biking. No other kind of, you've no interest in, or have you ever partook in like, kind of touring, or do you use bikes as a method to commute?
Oh
Or,
yeah, yeah. I think I got a road bike. I guess that would have been when I was in college, maybe like my freshman year of college. In Seattle, it's like works a lot better if you just ride a bike. Like it doesn't,
yeah.
there's not that much parking, so commuting is way better on a bike. In especially in Seattle. So yeah, I think I'd gotten my first. I mean, I had a bike growing up,
Mm-hmm.
but then I got a road bike in college, and then another road bike, and that I had until pretty recently. I actually did there was a period even after I started mountain biking when I was in PT school. I actually did more road biking than mountain biking for a little while.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So I suppose like, what has, sorry. So I know when I decided to start this podcast, like being a part of the Kona Ambassador program, I have a huge pool of people to reach out towards. Like, so the first thing I did was reach out to all the other Kona ambassadors, and so far, great response. A lot of people have signed on to have a conversation with me. And what was it about kind of? I suppose with Kona, they don't always just pick the person who can go the fastest down the hill or do the biggest jumps. They bring people on who have like an interesting story to tell, or they have, the cycling is more part of their life in like a creative way, I suppose. Sometimes it's like, so how does that kind of, what way would you tie your life in that kind of brought you on board with Kona, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I do some of the like typical things that you were mentioning, like racing. I mean, I do a lot of racing during the summer, a lot of
Okay.
downhill and enduro racing. But then I also do a lot of coaching. So there's a local high school and middle school mountain bike team called Mount Si MTB. So I've been coaching with them for quite a while and trying to build up like the girls specific team, which has been challenging, but it's just for some reason always hard to grow that group. And then I've been coaching with there's another youth group called Sweet Lines. So I did a little bit of coaching with them this past spring. So I think the coaching aspect might have been part of what is an additional thing that I bring to the table.
Cool.
We do a lot of trips as well, like mountain bike trips. Like we went to Madeira this past spring, so like being able to write up trip reports about like
Yeah.
where I've been riding is. I mean, I always find it interesting reading about other people's adventures on their bikes.
Cool. That sounds awesome. So like you, downhill is pretty much the extreme end of mountain biking, and like there used to be a big scene of downhill here in Ireland, but then when the kind of enduro race format really exploded in popularity, however, what's coming on 10 years ago now, kind of downhill just fizzled away into nothing, but enduro is still kind of holding on strong. Is there still a big downhill scene over where you
hmm
are?
Yeah, there's a series called the Northwest Cup that is it's Washington, let's see, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. I think those are the three states that the races are in. I think there's usually 8 races per year. So I've never actually done all the races in a season because there's some that it'll be like a 13-hour drive to get to, and it's like
Yeah.
you'd have to like take. I mean, I normally work 410, so I have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and those downhill races are it's like the full weekend. You go
Yeah.
and you practice on Friday, and then practice on Saturday, and then race on Sunday. And so if you also have like a full day of driving, like that's a little tough to do. So I usually go to the ones that there's usually at least like 2 races in Port Angeles, which is maybe 2.5 hours from where I live. And then there might be like we had a bike park just open at Snoqualmie Pass, which is
Oh, cool.
I guess 30 minutes east of where I live. So maybe there'll be a bike. There was like talk of there being one of the bike races there this year, but
Hmm.
then the bike park didn't end up opening until like the end of August. So they ended up having their last race in Port Angeles. So yeah, there's a pretty big like there. I don't think there were any pro GRT races as part of the series last year, but like the year before, I think there was one. So like you'll sometimes when they have one of those races, you'll sometimes see some names that you'll also see on like World Cup races.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, there's a decent. I feel like not huge, but there's a decent downhill scene.
Yeah, it definitely kind of fizzled away here. I think it was something similar. Like you have to drive somewhere and you'd park up in a field and pitch a tent because like the trail would be down through some woodland or a forest on the side of a hill, and the only way to access it would be like farmers' fields. And if they let you host a race there, everyone would park up in the field on Friday night and camp out, and then Saturday all day practice, and Sunday morning would be practice and then the race.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when Enduro came along, then it seemed like, I know for me, it kind of appealed a little bit more, where you'd still get the weekend away, but like it's not just race down a hill as fast as you can and then get the uplift back up to the top on the trailer of a tractor, and then do it again and rinse and repeat. And then on Sunday, you might get an hour practice, and then you're going to have to hang around all day and wait for your number to be called standing at the top of the hill. Whereas with the Enduro, like you could go out with a group of friends and, you could just spend the day cycling all day Saturday, and then on the Sunday race, you could still be with the same group of friends and work your way to the top of each stage and race down. And it kind of, it appealed a little bit more that it was just a weekend out cycling with your friends rather than just concentrating solely on going as fast as you can down the hill and just purely kind of racing. It was a little bit more relaxed of an environment, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how there's like, and like I definitely do a mix of both of those races. So it's like
Hmm.
it's always interesting comparing like the things that are fun about downhill versus the things that are fun about enduro. So yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, I don't race enduro or downhill anymore. I used to, but I've mellowed out a little bit, and I just kind of enjoy cycling my gravel bike or going out on the cross country trails and just having some fun on the bike. I do some of the local cross country races, but they're quite small.
Hmm.
So like you'll always see the same faces there, and like in each kind of skill category, you're probably racing against another like 4 or 5 people. But it's nice to kind of support the local league, and the numbers have been growing.
Hmm.
And it's great to see the races getting busier, and a lot of young kids and juniors and everything getting out and racing as well. And some of them are crazy fast. Like I would like they're faster than the adults. Like
Yeah, that's the same. Like at the downhill races, there's a lot. Like there's more kids at the downhill races than there are at the enduro races. I think partly because it's actually like at the downhill race, it's usually either like a shuttle, or if it's at a resort, it's a chairlift. So it's
hmm.
easier for the kids to like actually get up to the top of the mountain versus like
Yeah,
the enduro races. There's a lot of kids doing them, but like I mean they're big days. So it's like I
yeah,
don't know if I would have been able to go out and do a 20-mile day as like a 15-year-old. I mean that's I feel like that's really impressive for those kids. Whereas there's like a bunch of like really little kids doing the downhill races, which is that's also been cool to see. Like that I feel like has just since I've been doing the downhill races, it seems like the number of kids doing them has grown a lot. Oh, and I know, yeah, you reminded me, the fastest times. Yes, the fastest times, at least for sure in the women's field, is in the under 18 category.
yeah. Big time. Like, because I know there's at these kind of local cross country races, there's one girl, and she's, she was started off in the under 10s and under 8s and then under 12s and then in the juniors, and I think she still falls into the junior category, but she'll go and she'll do the junior race, and then when all the kids are done and it's time for the adults and the seniors, like she'll just go and race the race anyway with the elites just for the sake of getting a few more laps in, and like,
That's insane.
she'll just be just hanging on to the back of the guys, just cycling along with them, like not even trying. And it's crazy. It's like, like if you keep that, if you're that passionate about it, like you're definitely kind of going places, hopefully. The only
Yeah.
downside to Ireland is like we're such a small cycling market, it can be very hard to kind of break out of it and get into the world scene. Like there's been a few kind of World Cup downhill riders out of Ireland, and then there's Greg Callahan in the Enduro series, like, and there's a couple of new juniors in the World Cup series in the downhill as well coming out of Ireland. Like, so it's great to see that they can kind of break free from the tiny market that is this country, because like when you don't have a huge selection of the downhill courses with uplifts and chairlifts and everything, like, how do you get the practice in? So it really takes a lot of dedication on their part, and especially with the parents as well, supporting them and bringing them places so that they can get in the laps and get the experience and the skill. And it's brilliant to see, really. I suppose it's not as much of a problem over in the US. There's much big market. I'd say there's much tighter competition over there.
Yeah. We also have like a lot of trails available, even just like right where I live. There's we can ride to some trails from my house, and then there's Tiger Mountain, which is just like 10 minutes away from here, and then Tokal, which is the place that's in Falls City. It's the place where you could ride like all winter, basically, unless it actually snows down low.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot to choose from, and then now like there's a bunch of stuff up at the pass. So yeah, we're
And would
definitely
they
lucky.
mostly be like, are they all kind of enduro trails, or there
Yeah,
be a mix of like a little bit of cross country, a little bit of enduro, a little bit of downhill, or is it just people that have decided, oh, I'm going to cut the trail into the side of the mountain and you can use it for whatever?
yeah, no, there's definitely a mix. Probably, yeah, the majority would be like enduro trails. But yeah, there's some trails that are kind of like more full on just downhill trails, and then
Hmm.
there's definitely a lot of cross country trails. Like especially at Tokal, there's a lot of cross country trails. So like it's sometimes fun to like just come up with like some huge ride where you're doing a mix of cross country and enduro and downhill. Like you can at all of these places you can put together like really big fun rides to do.
Cool. And so you mentioned earlier that you're involved in kind of training. Is it so you work a part of the local schools and you train kids? Like, would that be part of the cycling? And do you like, is that I'd imagine that's called all volunteer on your part to go down to the local cycling club and help out.
Yeah, it is associated with the school. The one associated with the school is volunteer. All the coaches are volunteer. The
Hmm.
other one, Sweetlines, those ones are paid coaches. So the one that's associated with the school that's volunteer, it's you don't like go to the school. We meet at the bike trails, but yeah, they any
Yeah.
like at the I guess it's usually in like February, March. That's when we'll like go to the school and have a meeting and talk about it, like an informational meeting to let people know about it, and then yeah, that one is volunteer. So it's usually like ideally once a week. Sometimes it ends up like, especially in the summer with bike races, it ends up being like maybe a couple times a month that I do that.
Hmm. Yeah, I suppose like when everybody's trying to volunteer their time, if life takes over sometimes and it's hard to get the people there. But like, is there much support from the schools, or like, because like over here there's, you join a private cycling club and that's about as much as you'll get. There's no kind of cycling clubs or anything like that in the schools, or there's no there's no support or kind of infrastructure. Yeah, it's just not a thing that's done here. It's mainly kind of ball sports that everybody partakes in when they're joining clubs and schools here. So
It
like, does
yeah.
it work more like you go into the school and say we do this as a club and it's kind of attached to the school, or does the school itself kind of support the students?
It's more the first one. It's kind of just attached to the school. Like
Okay.
so yeah, there's not, I wouldn't say there's like tons of support from the school. Like I don't think there's any like financial support from the school, but I think actually the majority of I mean, there's a fee to join the team, which is like
Mm-hmm.
there's kind of two teams now. There's like a more competitive team that's maybe like $300 a year or something. And then there's a club team that's like $100. So it's like, it is a pretty low fee for like, given that there's like weekly practices
Yeah.
and like coaching at the practices. But that's like the fee from the kids and well, their parents. So I don't think there's any like financial support from the school, but I think where a lot of the support comes from is so people that work at like Boeing or Microsoft, like some of these bigger companies will match, like if they go and volunteer to do coaching, the company will like match that. And so I think that's actually where the majority of the
Oh wow.
funding comes
Yeah.
from, is from some of these companies matching their employees volunteering their time. And then so yeah, if that answers your question. There's not like, I think the main support comes in the fact that they'll let us have a meeting at the school and like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, kind of like spread the word through the school. But we don't, I mean, since we're mountain biking, we don't use any of like we don't use like a field at the school or anything. Although we probably could if we wanted to, but it just ends up being easier logistically. Like if you wanted to do like some drills before practice, you just do them at wherever we're meeting and then
Yeah.
go. It's usually like do some skills and then go for a trail ride and maybe stop halfway through and practice some more skills. So it just makes more sense to do that at the trail.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. Like that's such a kind of foreign concept to me that you could have that kind of that style of a club. Like I know they're getting more popular here with cycling is getting more popular, but it's still quite small. We're a small country, but
Mm-hmm.
it's I know that there's a group of really dedicated people kind of really pushing for skills days for kids, and especially skill days for women that are just joining the sport and getting into it, be it road or off road or mountain or gravel, because it's a fairly kind of male dominated sport. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd imagine it could be a bit intimidating at time, especially when there's always going to be one or two meatheads there that just want to go as hard and fast as they can. So
Yeah.
it's great that they the local cycling body is called Cycling Ireland,
Okay.
and that's like the national cycling governing body of the country. Like they kind of handle your race licenses with UCI and kind of
Okay.
insurance, and that's who you pay your fee to every year, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can join clubs then alongside that. But like they're kind of over the last couple of years, they've definitely put a big initiative into getting more kids out onto bikes and not
Mm-hmm.
just racing. It's not just all about like here. If you say somebody you ride bikes, they just automatically assume you cycle on the road with a racer bike.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's a big push on you know different types of disciplines. Like there's BMX clubs for like the track racing BMX, and there's casual cycling, and there's like skills days where they'll go to schools and they'll try and get the kids to come in with their bikes, and if they have like a guy who's a mechanic or someone there, they'll give each bike a quick look over to make sure it's okay and show them
Oh,
how
that's
to
cool.
cycle through kind of bollards and do hand signals to make sure they're safe on the road if they're cycling to and from school and things like that. So there's definitely a lot more going on now
Mm-hmm.
than there was when I was small. So it's great to see. But like, I think if you were to compare us to the UK or mainland Europe, we are still easily 15 years behind, I'd say, if not
Mm-hmm.
a bit more when it comes to kind of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really cool to hear about clubs like that. Just
Yeah, there definitely wasn't even like just when I was in high school, I don't remember there being a mountain bike club. So the fact that one exists is pretty cool. So I think that's why I like to keep supporting that, is to keep it going.
that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I'd like to hear that. 'Cause I just love cycling and I love to see other people cycling. I just think it's a great thing, and when I see it grow and become more popular and support everybody with it, I think it's really really cool. Um, what else can I ask you? I don't know. You've covered most of it. Like so, um, I suppose like racing wise, like what was it that kind of attracted you towards the racing? So if what was it, about 2010? You said you took up cycling. Like, was it because of
Yeah.
your husband and boyfriend? Did he race? Like, was it just kind of tagging along with him that you got into it? And like, because to jump from like, if the fact that you're racing downhill is, the pretty kind of high end, extreme end of mountain biking. So like, it's usually something you start when you're young and
Yeah.
reckless and wild and like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it was. I think I can probably attribute it to him also because I think, yeah, I'm trying to think of yeah, actually, the first race that we did was this like 24-hour cross country race. And it
Oh
was just sort
wow.
of yeah, it was like a team thing. I think there
Hmm.
was four of us, my husband, my friend Sarah, we had one other friend that did it with us. And like in hindsight, I don't think any of us were riding like the correct bikes. We were riding these like, big, like
Mm.
big older mountain bikes. So that one was, yeah, I think the first bike race that I did. And then yeah, so then I think I remember volunteering at a couple races that my husband was racing, a couple like enduros. I think this was around the time that there's a big enduro series here called, or it used to be called Cascadia Dirt Cup. I think it's now called Race Cascadia. Um, I think it was around the time that it started, which was somewhere around like 2010.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember when it was that my husband was racing. But yeah, I remember volunteering, like doing timing for a couple of those. And I do remember thinking like, huh, this like looks like it would be more fun to participate in than just do the timing. Um, but then I think so. There's this one race that happens every year that's a women's only race. That's the most fun race of the year because it's a good group. It's really hard not to have a good time at this race.
Hmm.
It's called the Sturdy Dirty. And so I think that's what I ended up doing first. And I do remember like the goal of that race was just to be able to like ride the whole course. Like I was in the sport category, and when I signed up, like there were still like all these features on the trail that I couldn't ride. So I
Yeah.
think maybe that's partly why I signed up for it, was just to, get myself to kind of get over some of those barriers to ride those features. But then once you like start racing, then you're like, okay, well now how can I do it faster? How can I ride the harder course? So then it's just been like a progression since then.
Awesome. I think that's kind of the same with me and my partner. Like she was outdoorsy anyway. Like she kayaked and everything. But then once she started cycling along with me, and now she's a mountain bike and she's a gravel bike, and she goes to the kind of the races as well, the cross country races and stuff. Um, so it's great that she enjoys doing it, and she's really, she starts to get the itch if she hasn't been on her bike in a while.
Yeah.
And then, we can go out, and I have two daughters, and like they enjoy cycling. Now the older one is kind of falling out of love with it as she's hitting her preteen years. So,
Hmm.
but if she doesn't like it, I'm not going to make her do it.
Yeah,
But
that's good not to force people
I
to
think,
do stuff.
yeah, but I know. My partner, it's kind of what you were saying, that there's certain parts on the trail that you couldn't do. Like
Hmm.
she went to one of the races, and there's this one section of the trail that she could never. It was just a big corner. It was kind of a berm that dropped down, but there was a few flat slab rocks in the middle of the corner, so it just felt a bit rough. But if you didn't go fast enough, you didn't need to hit it fast. But if you didn't go fast enough, you'd start to kind of slide down the edge of the berm
Mm-hmm.
and kind of go into the corner. And she has this kind of rule where she'll roll at it about three times, and if she doesn't get it, she's not feeling it, so
Hmm.
she'll go on. But the day of the race, I think she knew she was coming up to that bit, and she was kind of getting nervous, I think, but there was some guy standing on the side of the trail taking photos, and then she got distracted by him, and next thing you know, she realized she was around the corner, and she was like, oh.
Oh, nice.
And like that's all it was. Like, I could do that.
Yeah,
That's so easy. Like, it's just
that's awesome.
yeah.
I
And it's
love
some
I love that part about racing. Like when it like especially when it like you've been, working on something or thinking about something and then it actually like works for the race run.
yeah, it's all just mind games. Like, you keep worrying, and the longer you stand there and look at it, and like there've been times like that when I've been looking at something. It's like, oh, I'm going to do it. No, I don't. Oh, no, yeah, no. And then you go do the race run, and then you just you jump over it or you drop off it or do whatever, and it's like, oh, that's like, why was I so worried? That was really easy.
Yeah, and then it's like nice to then start to carry that over to just riding in general because you're like you start to yeah, learn to like look at features and be like, "Oh, okay, I think I can like picture how that would work," and like
Hmm.
just being more comfortable trying things. So, I think that's the part of racing that I like is just helping with progression.
Yeah. And so, like, when you're out there, if you're doing the training sessions with the kids, like, what was the original aim? More just to get people into cycling and get out there cycling and do the same kind of thing, or was it more to get kids to get outside and fitness wise, or was it to get a competitive club going, or a bit of everything?
So I'm pretty sure that the original aim of that specific club was just to get more kids biking,
Okay.
and they definitely like succeeded with that because I mean there'll be like 100 kids on the team, so they've gotten a lot of kids on bikes. But then this past year, the like the leadership of the club changes every couple years because it is a lot to take on.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's you're committing to like trying to run these like weekly practices for an entire season like so I mean like if it were me I would only be able to do that for maybe like 1 or 2 seasons before you'd like need a break from that, especially since it
Yeah.
is all volunteer. So this past year, the coach of the team did want, well, kind of the two coaches did want to push it in a little bit of a different direction and kind of split it up into there's this club that's just like we do want to work on skills, but also it's just the bigger goal is just getting more kids stoked on biking and like having a opportunity to go ride their bike, especially like if there's kids where their parents don't bike, they might not get the opportunity to go mountain biking unless they have like this situation. So it sort of split up into that, and then the other part of it was like the competitive team. And so I don't really know where it's going next year. Like the challenge was trying to run both of those things. You kind of
Mm-hmm.
need someone who's in charge of both of them. And since the kind of like the main leadership did want to focus on the competitive side, they sort of like shifted their focus to that. So there wasn't as much of a focus on the club team. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I think we're still like having conversations because like right now the season's kind of over. It'll be over until not that I'm gonna stop biking, and I'm sure there's lots of kids that are gonna keep biking, but there's not like
Yeah.
organized practices all winter. It'll
Mm-hmm.
start up again in like March or April. So I think there's conversations about what's going to happen next year. Like there basically needs to be someone who's going to run the club team for that part to keep going, and that might be challenging. Like my goal with the team, at least recently, has been to try to grow the girls team, which has always been like there'll be like 100 kids on the team and like 90% of them are boys, which is
Yeah.
awesome that there's 100 kids on the team, but it's like that means like maybe not 90%. That would be only 10 girls. There's probably like 15 to 20 girls total, but so like the challenge has been growing that, and my fear is that like if the club team goes away, like that like that's a safer environment for most like not everybody wants to compete. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I'm concerned about the club team going away because then that's going to affect the girls team growing. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what is gonna happen for next year. So
Yeah. Like, I'd hate to see that side of it, because like, as much as kind of I do go to the local cross country races and stuff, but it's mainly just to kind of support the scene and
mm-hmm.
kind of show up and enter the races, and you see the same faces there all the time and just go year after year. It's not like I have a few trophies, but like a lot of my trophies are literally just because I show up to every race and get a my string of
Yeah.
fourth places have given me enough points at the end of the season to get a trophy. But there's so many people out there like that I have no interest in competing, that I just love cycling their bikes just for the joy of cycling their bikes. And like, especially with kids, it's easy for an adult to say to another adult, come on, we go ride our bike or something like that. And, you hop in a car or your van and you go drive somewhere and you go do your thing. But it's not always that easy for kids to do that. And the fact that they have that club And, they have their regular meetings every week or every second week, and they always know that, oh, okay, I'm going to get to go ride my bike and see my friends and do my thing. But if it was to fall by the wayside and they were only going to focus on the competitive side, and there's always going to be those few people that don't really want to race, they just want to go out and have fun. But then if they don't have that club to go out, and they just kind of start to forget about cycling, and it'd be sad to see that happen.
Yeah, that's kind of my concern is like if you take that away, you're kind of like you're not really making it as inclusive and like, welcoming for anybody that wants to ride a bike. And I mean, that's part of why I support that club. So yeah, so I'm not, I don't know. There's been ongoing conversations about it. It's like, on the one hand, I'm like, well, I want the club team to keep going, but I can't really commit to running the club team. Like I want to run the girls team, and that's only going to be successful if the club team still exists. But I can't really like commit to running the club team. Like it's just it's a lot of work. So yeah, so I'm not really sure what'll happen. I'm hoping there'll be someone who does want to run the club team. I guess that's my hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say I'm sure it's a big undertaking. So yeah, that's wanting to see it keep going and then being able to put in the work to make sure that it keeps going are two different things. And like hopefully there's always those individuals that are like go above and beyond to keep these things going. So hopefully you'll be able to figure something out there.
I was gonna throw out the idea at some point that maybe they could like it seems like it doesn't have to be a volunteer job. Like if you like paid someone to run the club team, like I think the funds are available, and like I feel like it's just like it's hard to really commit to something that you're like volunteering your time to do. Whereas like if you're like, oh, this is like, a job that I'm like that I'm going to commit to these days, like I don't know, it'd be easier for me to commit to that, because then you could like take time away from something else that you're doing. So
yeah,
but we'll see.
Yeah, I know. Like you could easily be in it for the cause, but at the same time, if you have to take time away from your own 9 to 5 that pays the bills,
it's kind of hard.
It's kind of hard to give up those few hours when you're not being compensated for something else. Even though you still want to do it for the right reasons, but you can't always afford to miss a day's worth of work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on and having a chat with me. It's super early this morning. It's great to learn about your clubs and how you're kind of helping support them, and hopefully they keep going with the non-competitive side to keep the kids into it. And
that's my hope.
And I appreciate you taking the time this morning to come on and have a chat with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem at all.